We're moving to a public hearing agenda. Item number 1 is the Hawthorne Court Apartments, 25-37 to 25-43, 43rd Avenue, and 42-22 to 42-38, 216th Street. It's LP 2461. The landmark site is Queens, Block 6306, Lot 15, and this is a continued hearing from March 22nd, 2011. Marianne Percival presenting.
The Hawthorne Court Apartments is an exceptional example of a low-rise Tudor Revival garden apartment due to its complex detailing and massing, unusual layout, and scenographic environment. Sited on a large corner lot, the 16 two-family units are arranged in 2 groups, a large building of 11 units and a smaller one of 5 units, with the majority of the entrances facing the courtyard. While ultimately part of a whole, Benjamin Brownstein gave each unit an individual appearance by varying roof lines, dormers, and entrances, as well as the proportion of facade materials. This complex massing creates a highly scenographic environment that elevates the interior courtyard in particular to a new aesthetic level. On 43rd Avenue, set back behind deep lawns, the nearly identical end units, numbers 1 and 2 on the west and 16 and 17 on the east, give the appearance of large single-family dwellings. The units, numbers 11, 12, and 15, fronting on 216th Street, are built close to the street and read as Tudor Revival row houses. 2 paths, one with a wrought iron archway, lead into the court from the streets. During the late 1920s and early 30s, several Tudor Revival-style garden apartments were constructed within walking distance of the Bayside Railroad station. Most of the apartments have symmetrical facades ranged in a U-shaped plan around the courtyard. Buildings on corner sites, which include some units accessed from the street, often feature a more elaborately designed secondary street facade. Another variation can be seen in Surrey Court, which is laid out in the style of a quadrangle. By comparison, it is little wonder that advertisements for the Hawthorne Court Apartments, with its free-form layout, complex massing, and picturesque detailing, boasted that, quote, a famous architect, unquote, deemed it, quote, the most beautiful apartment group I have ever seen, end quote. And the Queen's Chamber of Commerce awarded it for its design.
Thank you, Marianne. Are there any questions? All right. I know people are here to speak on this item. Henry Euler.
Good morning. My name is Henry Euler. I am the recording secretary of the Bayside Historical Society, also a life member of the organization, as well as the Queens Historical Society. I am a member of the Queens Preservation Council and the Landmarks Committee of Community Board 11 in Queens. I also belong to Historic Districts Council. I am testifying today as an active preservationist in my community. I am submitting with this testimony a copy of a letter that I wrote to the LPC on March 22nd, 2011, and I delivered that testimony at that time when they had the hearing. In that letter, I went through all the reasons why I felt that the Hawthorne Court apartment complex should be designated a New York City landmark by the LPC. I still believe that the complex should be landmarked more than 3 years after I wrote the first letter. Today, Hawthorne Court is as beautiful as ever and is basically intact. It still has historical as well as architectural significance as described in my old letter. The Hawthorne Court complex is located down the block from the Lawrence Cemetery, a New York City landmark site. Unfortunately, the owners of the complex who do not live in my community of Bayside oppose landmark designation of their property. I strongly believe that if a site has historical, architectural, and/or cultural significance and is worthy of landmarking, as this site is, then the site should be designated despite objections from the owner. Perhaps the owners do not realize how important it is to preserve historical sites in our city, or is afraid that when work needs to be done on the exterior of their buildings, that cost would be prohibitive. The owners need to be enlightened that the costs can be worked out, that that owning landmark structures is desirable, and many people want to live in landmark structures. The financial value of their property is enhanced if landmark status is obtained. The Queens Preservation Council, at its monthly meeting in October, unanimously endorsed the idea that Hawthorne Court should become a New York City landmark. The Bayside Historical Society concurs as well. For all of these reasons, I urge the LPC to designate the Hawthorne Court apartment complex as a New York City landmark. And I also look forward to working with the Commission, and all the preservation groups in Queens looks forward to continue to work with the Landmarks Commission to landmark other sites. We have wonderful historic neighborhoods like Broadway Flushing, Parkway Village, Richmond Hill that deserve landmark status. We have great individual buildings, so we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Euler. Kelly Carroll?
Kelly Carroll, Historic Districts Council. In the far edges of Queens, where Bayside merges into Little Neck, among rows of developments dating from the first half of the last century, most of the house designs rarely come off as more than undistinguished. Yet almost everywhere there are surprises, often pleasant and sometimes extraordinary, to startle the wanderer. In this section of Bayside, neo-Tudor houses, a style that enjoyed a brief vogue in the early 20s and 30s of the last century, scatter their charms of varying effectiveness over quite a large area. Even so, for a visitor to come up on a grouping so remarkable as Hawthorne Court on the northwest corner of 43rd Avenue and 216th Street gives special pleasure. Part of its effectiveness is based on the fact that the site fills a large corner lot that allows a group of good-sized and handsome apartment houses to enclose a small network of seemingly random but actually carefully arranged group of picturesque buildings accessed by artfully winding paths leading to a central courtyard partially bounded by largely brick-walled units topped with steeply pitched slate roofs. Once within the grouping, the visitor feels strongly enclosed by roofs and walls, variegated with different motifs and materials, but all artfully disposed. Windows of an array of shapes and materials further vary the experience. Small as the development is, it is so cleverly enclosed, and the welcoming ungated paths lead the visitor so ingeniously through well-maintained trees and plantings of various size and age that a striking unity of character creates a remarkable experience that one hates to leave. This remarkable grouping is fully worthy of designation. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more speakers on this item? Any more speakers? All right, we received an email from Rigo Forest Preservation Council, also speaking in support of this project. Are there any questions? All right, what we will do is we will adjourn the hearing till the afternoon. Our understanding is the owner could not make it right now, so they're going to be coming back in the afternoon, and we will continue the hearing at that point and allow the owner to speak.
We're going to back to the public meeting. Public meeting item number 2 is proposed for designation. The First German Baptist Church, later Ukrainian Autocephalic Orthodox Church of St. Vladimir, later Congregation Tifereth Israel Town and Village Synagogue, 334 East 14th Street, aka 334 to 336 East 14th Street, LP 2475. The landmark site, as it was heard, is Manhattan Block 455, Lot 24, Gail Harris presenting.
German Baptist Church, located at 334 East 14th Street, is a significant reminder of the evolving character of the Lower East Side and an excellent example of the Bogenstiel style of architecture. The church was erected in 1866 to 69 at the northern boundary of Klein-Deutschland, the thriving mid-19th century German community. The building's architect was Julius Buchel, And this is an early example of his work and his only known church design. Because the building is currently undergoing facade repairs and concealed by scaffolding, we will be viewing photographs taken in 2013 and 2014. Sorry about that. The building's Rundbogenstil design incorporates such typical German Romanesque features as rough quartz stone facings, large round arched openings, arcuated corbel tables, and a central gable pierced by an oculus window. The use of specifically German sources and restrained handling of detail One second, Heather. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. The use of specifically German sources and the restrained handling of detail sets this apart from many of the other surviving Rundbogenstil churches in New York. The German Baptist Church emphasized the affirmation of German cultural identity and had roots in the Pietist theological movement, which favored both Basilican church designs with simple form and chaste ornament. The First Baptist Church was a vital social and spiritual center for its largely poor and immigrant congregation and an important center and training ground for the German Baptist Church in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. However, by the 1920s, the German presence on the Lower East Side had declined, replaced by a new wave of immigrants from Eastern Europe and new communities such as Little Ukraine. In 1926, the First German Baptist Church leased and later sold its building to the newly formed Ukrainian Autocephalic Orthodox Church of St. Vladimir, located in the heart of the Ukrainian community in the largest city in the country. St. Vladimir was one of the most important Ukrainian Orthodox churches in North America. In 1939 to 1940, the church was refurbished and altered to give it a more Eastern appearance. In 1962, the Church of St. Vladimir sold the building to the congregation Tifereth Israel Town Village Synagogue. Tifereth Israel Town Village Synagogue has earned a reputation for social activism, egalitarianism, and inclusiveness, and has played an important role in the social framework of the East Village. The synagogue made some changes to the facade of the building, notably signage and the installation of iron menorahs at the first story and a Star of David at the second story window lighting the sanctuary. The building survives today as a largely intact and fine example of the Rundbogenstil architecture and as a significant reminder of the rich cultural and social history of the Lower East Side.
Okay, thank you, Gail. Oh,
Okay.
yes.
So Commissioners, at the time of the hearing, the synagogue asked us to consider a lot in part, excluding the later back building, and it is the Research Department's recommendation that we do designate a lot in part because the back building is totally invisible from the street. You can only see it within the church building itself, and then you can only see a very small portion of the building. And also, it's largely a utilitarian building. It's basically plain brick walls, a little bit of dentils at a cornice line. So there's really, not much architecture there as well. So based on those reasons, because of its lack of visibility and because of its utilitarian nature, we recommend that the lot be a lot in part and include only the church building.
Okay, are there any questions?
Do we have
Yes.
images of the back building?
Here, this is all you can see from within. And that's from within this alleyway that's within the body of the church.
Is it original to the construction?
No, it's later.
1889.
Sorry?
1889.
Not that much later. Were the turrets when it became the St. Vladimir, I guess, were they closed in the way they are now, blind?
No, they were,
Can you turn back to that image for a moment?
sure.
There.
When they originally did the, when they originally did the alterations, those had sort of louvers in them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they may have been open initially in the 19th century, but they were louvered at the early stage, and then they were filled in later.
All right, any other questions? I think this building is very worthy of being designated as an individual landmark. Not only is it an attractive style, it represents a certain era of architecture, but also represents the history of the Lower East Side, where there were waves of immigrant groups that came into the neighborhood and were accommodated in religious and institution buildings. And then this one has a particularly interesting history going back to the mid-1800s, the first, German Baptist Church, subsequently the Ukrainian Orthodox, and most recently in 1960s as a synagogue for Tiferet, Israel. So I would recommend that we designate it. Is there any concern? And otherwise,
I have a concern, not only that I know this building relatively well because I've had my Columbia classes there studying this building. It's the front facade is fantastic. Essentially, it's difficult to see beyond the front facade, and so for me, I find it difficult to sacrifice the back building because it does have a part of the social development of this building as much as anything beyond the front facade does. And so at this point, I don't think I'm ready to sacrifice that back building. I see it as part of this complete entity.
okay. I would just say that, you've obviously been there. I've been there as well. I think if you actually go, it's not just the front facade. It goes to close to maybe 70 feet. The annex building at the back is, at least in my opinion, truly without any style that should be preserved. I think this allows the synagogue to also gives them the flexibility to use that space for their mission in a different way from the front. The front is really where you have the congregation space, any kind of interface between the edge of the building, which we recommend for designation, versus there at the back would be reviewed by our staff. So in my opinion, and what I would recommend is that this is a good compromise in order to get this designated. So Michael, can we convince you right now, or, okay. All right, so we will bring this back for vote in the afternoon.